Sources attributed to the armed groups in Syria confessed the coming of more than 1,500 foreign fighters to Syria this week via Turkey. Thousands of Americans and citizens of the Syrian community organized mass marches in solidarity with Syria in different US cities. And President Putin of Russia asks his Minister of Defense to conduct combatant readiness tests for the Russian armed forces in the east. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian television in Damascus. Russia calls on the United States to review the information and stop bid in the situation regarding the possible use of chemical weapons in Syria and to refrain from giving inaccurate interceptions and interpretations in this case. Concerning the claim of U.S. State Department spokesperson Jennifer Psaki accusing Russia of obstructing the work of the United Nations Security Council on ensuring the arrival of the UN expert mission to Syria to investigate on reports about use of chemical weapons. Official Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Alexander Yukashevich said that the US declaration represents an inaccurate interpretation about the international investigation into the use of chemical weapons in Syria, adding that we must stop now bidding on this matter and ensure reliable information, review about the possible use of chemical weapons in Syria and coordinate between Damascus and the United Nations. Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, said that his country gave the United Nations professionals, which confirms the use of the armed opposition of chemical weapons in Aleppo, affirming that Moscow exerted efforts with the Security Council to facilitate the entry of UN experts to Syria to investigate this alleged use of chemical weapons by armed groups on the 19th of March in Khan al-Assad area in Aleppo countryside. About 1,500 foreign fighters have entered Syria this week via Turkey that facilitated their entry by a prior political decision, according to statements by sources attributed to the armed terrorist groups in Syria. The statements lend more evidence to reports suggesting the involvement of Arab and foreign countries in sending terrorists to Syria. The sources told the Italian news agency ACI that some of the militants settled in Syria while fewer numbers left for Iraq. The sources pointed out that about 17,000 non-Syrian fighters are believed to be operating in Syria, adding that the bulk of Arab fighters there are of Saudi nationalities, whereas the Chechens make up the majority of the non-Arab fighters. Deputy Russian Foreign Minister Special Envoy of the President for the Middle East, Mikhail Bogdanov, said that there are hundreds of mercenaries and militants from various countries fighting in Syria within illegal armed groups. Interfax news agency quoted Bogdanov as saying in a statement that Syrian and Russian special services are exchanging information in connection with reports about 600 foreign militants fighting in Syria, including fighters coming from Russia, Europe and the United States. In our field developments, a unit of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces ambushed an armed terrorist group south of Admir city in Damascus countryside. The group had already infiltrated from the Jordanian borders. A military source said that the army killed 3 terrorists and seized the terrorists' weapons and tools. The source added that the weapons seized included P-10 shells, RPG launchers, 10 automatic rifles, a sniper rifle, and big amounts of various ammunition, masks, and sophisticated telecommunication devices, in addition to seizing the vehicles they were using. Thousands of Americans and citizens of the Syrian community in different US cities organized mass marches in solidarity with Syria, calling on the US administration to stop supporting terrorists in Syria with money and weapons.
Participants in the march, which was organized at Times Square in New York upon an invitation by the Syrian American Forum and the American anti-war organizations, chanted slogans which condemned the aggression on Syria, calling for halting the war against it and raising Syrian flags and placards which call for the halt of foreign intervention in the country. Meanwhile, the cities of Chicago and Los Angeles, hundreds of Americans and Syrians gathered in front of the federal institutions to send a message to the U.S. administration calling for halting the support, arming or financing the terrorists in Syria.
The U.S. has no right to interfere in any country, especially in Syria, because that's what's happening now, is the U.S. is interfering in Syria. They've been planning to take over Syria for a long time, years, and now they're working actively. We oppose that.
Today we have once again taken a stand with the people of Syria and against the United States policy of intervention and war. This practice by the United States is, of course, been going on for many years, but the Syrian people are the latest to suffer from it.
And I'm here because I believe that Syrians should choose what kind of government they should have and that the U.S. shouldn't intervene.
I don't think there's any clear indication that opposition forces have anything positive to contribute to the Syrian society.
Similar demonstrations will be organized in several American cities, including New York and Ohio, during the forthcoming days.
The Austrian Die Presse newspaper affirmed that the flare-up of the armed conflict between Al-Qaeda organization and the so-called Free Army militia reflects the divisions and confusion of the opposition. The Daily pointed out that the West committed grave mistakes in dealing with the crisis in Syria, especially when it allowed the funding of terrorist and Takfiri gangs, pointing out that this move threatens to destabilize the region apart from the danger of terrorist return to Europe. In a related context, the Australian newspaper Vinar Tsutyang stressed that the situation in Aleppo is serious and will lead to a humanitarian catastrophe due to the armed terrorist group's acts of besieging hundreds of thousands of civilians. The newspaper pointed out that the armed terrorist groups prevent the arrival of food, water and medicines to civilians, as the armed groups use the people as humanitarian shields and put them under house coercive. The newspaper clarified that the armed terrorist groups are ready to use all prohibited ways and weapons, including the chemical ones, to achieve their aims in attacking the Syrian Arab army, especially after the army achieved several victories in many places. Russian President Vladimir Putin assigned Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to start a surprise test of the readiness of the Russian armed forces for the military forces located to the east of the country. The armed forces will be put in full alert at 1 p.m. in the 13th of July and set out in the fields of training. President Putin informed his defense minister to notify the defense ministers of the foreign countries concerning Russia's plan to take these surprise tests. The Russian defense minister mentioned in a statement that the main aim of this campaign is to test the readiness of the units to carry out their assigned missions and evaluate the level of the army personnel, also processing the units with weapons and military equipment, as this test is going to last for a whole week. The late actor Nedal Seijari was laid to rest, accompanied by tearful crowds who turned out to pay their last respects. More in the following.
On behalf of President Bashar al-Assad, Latakia Governor Ahmed Sheikh Abdel Qadir offered condolences to the family of the late actor, who expressed gratitude for President al-Assad for the noble gesture. State Minister for National Reconciliation Affairs, Dr. Ali Haider, also participated in the funeral ceremony. The renowned actor passed away last Thursday after long suffering from an incurable disease. The funeral procession stopped at the National Theatre in Latakia, where friends and fans gathered for observing a last farewell ceremony. The body of Seijari was laid to rest at a Rawda cemetery in Latakia city. Actor Seijari was a shining drama star who played comic roles in well-known TV series such as Deadaya, A Lost Village, Spotlight, and starred in drama series like Al-Ababid and others. Nedal Seijari was born in Latakia in 1965, graduated from the Higher Institute for Arts and became a member of the Artists' Union in 1991.
With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region, you can view our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Government steps to control prices in Syria, and the latest in business and finance in our economic news after the